Moose, you did pretty good today. I know you're a little bit cranky at this point. We were working with him for about 3 hours. Moose is the one we have in the shot, and this is Ruby. We have the other dogs are, let me see, we have Charlie, Tonka, and Oscar. I remember them all. And of course, this is Moose. Now, this is the roadmap to success. I really think the problem that we had, I mean, the video we have above is really the BAT training. Behavior adjustment training is what it's called. There's a book on it called BAT, and it's a great book if you have dogs that are reactive. But basically, that's a great technique that we're going to use when the boyfriend comes into the house. But remember, when we do that, we need to call or text ahead of time, so that basically the dog is not going to see Nolan or anybody coming up that he might be reactive to. And what we want to do is have those treats ready and kind of go through the instructions we have there. And anytime the dog is reactive or growly, the person either needs to move away, or we're going to call, preferably we're going to call the dog here. But if the dog gets to the point where it won't listen anymore, the stimulus needs to leave the area completely. Hey buddy, this is Charlie. Is it still rolling? Okay. So basically, in order to stop the dogs, all these dogs I think that they're all in charge. These two were kind of going at each other a little bit when I first came in. He went after him because Moose was trying to bark at me, and Charlie's like, that's my job. We have 4 dogs here that now all think that their job is to be in charge of the humans, because the humans didn't have any rules, they were under-exercised, and the dogs were able to tell the humans when to pet them. So the dogs kind of got the impression that they were running the show. Moose thought he was running the show. Charlie thought he was running the show. Ruby used to think she's running the show. She's just happy to be up on the furniture. She's the only one allowed in the furniture for the short term. But basically, all the dogs consider themselves to be in charge of the humans, but they also were in conflict with each other. Sit, buddy. Sit. Yes. So in order to achieve or flip what I call the leader-follower dynamic, I went over a number of ways for the humans to start acting like leaders to the dogs. The very first thing I usually start off by talking about is exercise. All of these dogs would benefit from a little exercise. And if we're going to have somebody come over and one of the dogs is reactive to that person or misbehaves, we want to take that dog out for some exercise and make sure they have about a half an hour recovery period between when they return home and when the person's going to show up. But by taking off that excess energy, we make it easier for them to accommodate or to be willing to be open to us, to listening to us. Now, the more that we enforce rules consistently, the more the dogs see us acting like leaders. Sit. And so some of the rules we went over, not being allowed in the furniture. She's the oldest dog, and she's kind of deaf and blind, and so she has the status position. This kind of keeps her out of the way, which also helps, and it helps the dogs respect her a little bit more. All right, so no furniture for at least 30 days or as long as the problem's going on. We have one dog, Oscar, who is a marker, and he marked in here just right in front of all of us. That comes from his perception of thinking that he is in charge, that he has authority. So, and if he pees on something, sit. The next dog's going to pee on it, and then the next dog. And then we have a cascading deal, which is why I talked to the guardian about you have a solution to clean it up. It needs to have an enzyme in it. Otherwise, you're just covering up the scent, and dogs will smell through that cover-up. So, let me see. So, not being allowed on the furniture for 30 days or as long as the problem's still going on. And then only with invitation, only for good behavior. So if I invited Moose up here on the furniture with me and he started barking, he would have to get down. Or if I invited him up and he went to get a drink of water, he would need to get permission or an invitation to get back up, even though he had an invitation before. Now, I'd like to teach the dog directional commands. And to do directional commands off the furniture, what I would do is I would touch her nose with a treat. I wouldn't do it for her because she doesn't move around very much. But I touch her nose with a treat and then I toss it on the ground. Only do this with one dog in the room. If the other dogs are in there, that can create a fight and not the energy we're looking for. And don't encourage, here's the treat, come and get the treat. Drop it so they see it and let them hear it. And then as soon as the dog licks it up off the ground, say the word off. So now we're creating a reward for getting down. And for dogs, the higher they sit, the more rank or status they have. So when we ask dogs to get off the furniture, we are essentially demoting them a little bit. So by making a reward sit, I'm going to talk about passive training here in a minute. By basically creating a directional command, we make it easier to communicate what we want. Come. Now, I also do directional commands for each room. So what I recommend we do is to grab a handful of these high-value treats or a treat the dogs are responsive to. Go to each room in the house, stand right inside the doorway. If this is the doorway and this is the hallway, I'm going to touch the dog's nose with the treat and toss it 3 feet outside the room. As soon as the dog goes and gets it, we're going to say the word out to go out of the room. And do that with about 2 or 3 treats, and the dog will come back to you, toss another treat, come back, do it a third time, then go to a different room. So we want to practice teaching the dog to leave every room in the house, and that way if the dog's underfoot in the kitchen when we're preparing food and we say out, the dog knows what we want them to do. Sit. All right, so getting back to the rules. For dogs, well, they eat in the order of their rank. And we were also, for dogs to be within 7 feet of anyone who's eating is a challenge for their food or their item. And so if we're feeding dogs human food, we're actually training them to violate, really to break their own moral code. And so it's, and then if one dog does it, the next dog's going to do it. Now you have all the dogs competing to be defiant and to break the rules. And that's kind of part of the scenario we had here. So what we'd like to do is stop feeding dogs people food at all because, like I said, a lot of it has garlic and onion in it. That's toxic to dogs. It also trains them to break a boundary and encourages all the other dogs to do so. Now, dogs don't get salmonella. So if you would actually cooking some chicken and you want to give your dog some chicken, as you cut the fat and gristle off your chicken, put it in a bowl. Don't spice it. Don't cook it. When your dog's dinner time, put it in the dog's bowl. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't smell or taste or smell similar to the humans. It's not coming off the table to the dog, so it doesn't confuse the dog that way. Let me see. While I'm on feeding, the dog should eat in the order of their rank. I would probably feed her first. Then I'd probably feed one of these two next between Moose and Charlie. And then the other dogs and the visiting dog, the puppy, should be the last one to eat when he's coming, if he's eating here. And when one dog is eating, we're not going to let the other dogs within 7 feet. And that way the dogs see an ordered structure, and they also see the humans in control of the most important ritual that they go through, which is eating. Now the human's going to eat something first. If you're not going to eat a real meal, just grab a chip or a cracker and eat it in 5 or more small bites. Then invite the dog to come over and take and eat. And if I invite her to eat, she would have different rules because she's older. But if I invite him to eat and he comes and sniffs the bowl and walks away, then I pick up the bowl, I dump the empty food out of the bowl, I put the empty bowl back down on the ground. This, what I'm telling the dog is, you better eat when I tell you to eat, and if you don't want to eat, that's fine. I'm not going to ask you or force you to do it, but the food is not going to wait around. And then eventually the dog will start eating when you ask them to, and it's helpful in case dogs need to have medicine, sit. Or you're going on a trip or whatever. For most dogs, you should be able to put the food down there and we'll eat it. Now we have multiple dogs here. I suggest we use passive training to teach the dog a command word to eat. So maybe his word is grub. Every time he takes the first bite of food, he hears the word grub. The other dogs hear grub and there's no food in their mouth, so it doesn't have any connotation for them. When he gets done eating, he has to leave the area. Then we invite the next dog to come up. Only the dog is eating is allowed to be in close proximity to food. And I would arrange the bowls, if you can, so that dogs are not walking by a bowl full of food. They walk by empty bowls until they get to their bowl, which actually has some food in it. Let me see. Other rules: not being allowed within 7 feet of a human who is eating. So imagine there's a boundary of 7 feet. Now, if I'm eating and I have crackers in my mouth, I can't use the hissing sound, and I have a family member here, the family member can get up and hiss for me or get between me and the dog and march towards the dog using that third escalating consequence until the dog gets to the boundary. This is how we establish invisible boundaries. So let's say we have a box on the floor around the dinner table. The dog's going to come and approach it. As soon as it crosses the line, whoever's closest to get up and march directly at the dog, or preferably hiss at the dog while it's a foot away from the boundary. Remember, the hiss should be used before the dog does the wrong thing. First thing we do is we're going to hiss one time per incident. Second thing we do is we stand up abruptly, turn to face the dog, keep pivoting until the dog stands, sits, or lies down to communicate it's done challenging us. When it does, we take 2 steps backwards, one with each foot only, and we stop for 1 second. Then we go back to what we're doing. That's the second escalating consequence. Sit. The third consequence is to march directly at the dog until it turns sideways or greater away from you. And march directly at the dog. If I'm marching at the dog here and the dog goes over there, I don't keep marching this way. I march wherever the dog is. And as soon as the dog turns sideways, you stop in place. And then at that point, your second consequence, you're pivoting until the dog's stationary. Then you take those 2 steps back, pause 1 second, then go back to doing what you're doing. The only time this wouldn't count is if the dog's in a designated no dog zone. Let's say that there's a 7-foot boundary around me and I'm eating some food and the dog violates it, and I get up and march at it and turn sideways right away, but it's still inside the 7 feet. I would ignore that and bump into the dog until the dog crosses the threshold. Once it crosses the threshold, that's when I would stop. That's how we enforce an invisible boundary. In this case, it would be tape on the floor, or it could be, you don't have to. Now as a dog, the dog's going to try to go around me this way, so I'm going to step to the side and block there. If he tries to go this way, I'm going to step to the side and block here. And you always have to outlast your dog. It's one of the dirty secrets of dog behavior. If you let your dog win, you're teaching your dog to be defiant. The next time they'll be more defiant, and you'll have to go longer and longer. Because these dogs have been doing this, the family's going to have to kind of pay a little bit of a penalty. Sit. and really outlast the dogs consistently. Once we start doing it on a regular basis, that's funny. One of the dogs is sitting and it's got one of his legs up in the air. Anyways, once the dogs realize the humans are not going to give up anymore, they will start giving in faster and faster, and then they're seeing the humans acting like leaders. Another little sidebar is if I want to walk this way and the dog's standing in front of me, I'm going to walk through the dog. If I bump into the dog, that's okay. Not for you, but for everybody else. So the dogs need to learn when a human's coming, my job is to get out of their way. Again, we're kind of introducing a choreography of sorts. Another rule will be the dogs are not allowed to be in the kitchen when people are preparing food in the kitchen. The rest of the time you can go in the kitchen, but when we're preparing food, not sit. All right, so I'm talking about passive training and petting with purpose. We'll go through right now. This is what I've been doing is passive training. Every time he does and offers a behavior that I want, I pet him and recognize it by saying the command word of it. Just sit, just crash, just come, whatever it is. I wait for the dog to do it organically. I'm not telling you to do it for passive training. I'm just recognizing it and saying, I appreciate it when you sit down. That's actually a good way to get my attention. Now this leads me to what I call petting with a purpose. The guardians, if the dog's coming and nudging them or invading their personal space or barking at them, and the humans reach over and pet the dog. Anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're rewarding or enhancing. This also includes unbalanced states of mind. I'm guessing that when these dogs were all anxious and worked up, we would try to pet and say, it's okay, buddy. Well, that can sit. That can create a negative association. So what we want to do is instead, the dog will continue to get anxious or worked up or nervous because that's what gets me attention. So instead what we're going to do is if the dog nudges me or tells me what to do, I'm going to give it a counter order for petting with a purpose. As soon as it sits, I'm going to pet it under its chin and say the word sit and only the word sit and not sit, sit. Now you can use this hand motion to put the dog into a sit. Go over the remote. Now when you do it, start out parallel with the nose. Curl your fingers so I can't see what's in your hand. Hey, buddy. I gotta have a treat to do this with you. It helps you to have a treat the first several times that you do it. And you don't want to fake a dog out too much. Here you go, buddy. He didn't want him earlier, so I go like this and arc over the dog's head. As soon as it sits, I lower my hand, sit. As soon as the treat goes in the mouth, I say the word sit and I pet. Hey, buddy, I would give you the meat treat. I tried to give you one. You just left it over there. Your buddy's going to goggling it up. He's a little off his game today. All right, so petting with a purpose and passive training are the two easiest things you can do to train your dog and reward it for doing desired behaviors. Most people actually reward the dog for doing undesirable behaviors. The dog jumps up, you correct the dog. Or in this case, the dog jumped up on humans and they petted it. Well, they're saying jumping up on me is the best way to ask me to pet you. Now, from now on, if it jumps up on you, I'd shrug your leg a little bit and then give it a counter order, tell it to sit. When it sits, pet him under his chin, say sit. If you get a little slobber on your hand, wipe it on the dog's back. They make great towels. And that way we're associating it, and the more we do that, the more inclined the dog will get to that. And eventually it will come and sit in front of us to say, I'm prepaying for some attention. Let me see. I went through escalating consequences. What am I forgetting? We went through a focus exercise. If you forgot how to do that, if I don't have it linked above, message me and I can send you a link. I've done it with hundreds of dogs. I'd like everyone in the family to do the focus exercise with each dog once a day. Sit. That's passive training right here. Now I can scratch him on his back too, because his head, it would be awkward for me to go around. But whenever all things are equal, try to pet under the chin, facilitate the nose up orientation. Never pat a dog on top of the head like that because it creates a down nose orientation. Dogs don't really like it, and insecure dogs look down. And if you get a dog that you're petting and immediately puts his head down, then you really want to pet under his chin and facilitate that nose up. So for the focus exercise, remember it's 1 second, 1 second. And for all 12 treats. And once the dog's staring at you, the dog should be sitting here. Once it's staring at you the whole time, it's 1 second, 2 seconds for the second movement. Eventually it's 1 second, 20 seconds. But get there by going 1 second at a time. So maybe each day we only add 1 second. And go all the way to 20 seconds. I get a lot of clients go up to about 15 or 10 seconds, they stop. The whole idea is we want to be able to have each one of these dogs, maybe not Ruby, but all the rest of the dogs, we say focus, and they stop what they're doing and looking up at us. So if he starts staring at somebody, or he's about to do, staring, remember, is the first warning sign. So if you can catch him staring, it's very low level attention. You say focus. Now dogs can't multitask. Now I've turned my attention away from whatever I was protesting, and I'm getting something positive this way. I don't know if I put it on the video, but one of the things Nolan could do is after we've done the BAT stuff with the treats on the floor, have him get up and have the dog on a leash and not be able to go get him, and walk by him, or wherever you want to walk, and drop a treat about every couple steps. Sit. Now when you drop it, don't drop it up from here because you don't know where it's going to go, and don't place it. We want the dog to see it. And the dog should be able to see Nolan as he's walking his path. And he's going to drop a treat about like 4 inches and take another 2 steps, drop a treat. And then the person with the leash is going to lead him, Moose, to each one of those treats, and then to wherever Nolan is, but we're not going to let him get all the way towards Nolan. Now, for Nolan, we'd like the dog to really practice being in the room with Nolan. Now, we want to make sure, sometimes, you know, we're really relaxed, we're watching a movie as a family, dog's been fine with Nolan because we did all this stuff, and then Nolan coughs. Could be running over there. So if we do get to that point, what we want to do is I usually take a leash like this and I run it around the leg of a chair and run the leash through the handle and then attach it to the dog. So you make a tether. So Nolan can actually, we can all feel comfortable. If the dog does suddenly lunge towards Nolan, the leash is going to stop and keep them protected. Now we have hardwood floors here, so we have to make sure that it's not going to just, he's not going to take the piano or the couch with him. But it's a nice way to help make sure that Nolan feels safe. Sit. Let's get that out of your eyes. And helps him practice. I want to have the dog practice being in the room with Nolan, but not staring at Nolan, not growling at Nolan. Just good stuff. Now, something I didn't go over with the Guardians, I'd like them to do is, yes, he's a bulldog, is have Nolan grab a handful of the dog's food for him, take his hand and run it through his hands, and then put it in a Ziploc bag. So I want to start putting Nolan's scent on Moose's food. So that way every time Moose eats, Nolan's not around, but Moose gets a positive association. I like eating. Clearly he likes eating. And now he's associating with Nolan. Something else we can do is, if Nolan is comfortable doing this, is next time he works out or does something, take a hand towel and wipe off your body with and flip over both sides, put it in a Ziploc bag, and then bring it over here. What we would want to do is lie it on the ground and take one of these treats and drop it on the towel. Now when Moose comes over and licks it up, he's going to get a little bit of Nolan's scent, and it's going to be at the same time he gets the treat. After enough association, Nolan's scent equals me getting the tastiest treats I've ever had. Or when Nolan shows up, treats are sprinkled on the floor or they fall from the sky. All sorts of positive things. Now, eventually I would like to see Nolan walking the dog or walking with the person who's walking the dog. Dogs get over things by literally moving forward, so that would be something we want to do, but we would want to have, before Nolan starts interacting, we want to have at least 12 visits where Moose does not growl or stare or lunge or any of those things at Nolan before we actually start doing that. And we'd like to keep the visits short to begin with. Again, we want to exercise them ahead of time, give them at least 30-minute recovery period, and then what we want to do is have the visit relatively short. The shorter they are, you know, we just had a little bit of an incident where he was kind of growling and barking at me because he's probably a little bit tired. We've been at this for over 3 hours. So if we keep the visit short, maybe he shows up and it's a 5 or 10-minute visit and he leaves, then he just processes, oh, that was a good thing. And the longer we push, the more of an opportunity it is for him to growl or lunge at him. So each time that he comes over and that has a positive interaction with the dog and nothing bad from the dog, the less likely the dog is going to be to do that in the future. That's going to take multiple practices, and I'd like the families to work on the bat training as well. That's going to be really, really important because it gives the dog the ability to make the decision, not us. I'm trying to think. Am I forgetting anything you can think of? Okay, I'm getting a no. It sounds good. Come here, buddy. Yeah. Let's do one more sit for the camera and we'll end this. Sit. I'm not gonna say all the dogs, but this is my buddy Moose here, and this is him and his crew's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it. Isn't that right? Focus.